It's game time.
What's up, Internet? Alright, so just quick little note before we get into this. Due to the fact that, honestly, I don't want to rapid fire edit a bunch of 2-second clips of unlocking achievements, and I honestly don't think anyone would care to watch that, I'm going to save us both a headache here and just show footage of, well, actually, I don't know, just whatever I intend to play before I edit this together. So just a heads up. Anyway, trophies and achievements, which I will probably henceforth be referring to as Trochievements, as I do, are a series of arbitrary collectibles which a lot of people generally assume started with the Xbox 360, and that's only half true. This sort of thing actually started out on the Atari 2600, with Activision no less. Certain Activision games came with a special goal, and if you took a Polaroid photo of yourself, anyone remember those? God, I'm old. Anyway, you took a photo of yourself and sent it away, and they would send you a patch. It was like a little badge of honor. You could sew it on your jacket and show it off to your friends. Show them how cool you were at landing the space shuttle, or whatever. They were very collectible, and today are even worth a decent amount of money. And no, they still don't make them. About 20 years later, with the advent of the Xbox 360, Microsoft decided to make their own series of badges, except these were digital and came with point values for whatever reason, and since then everyone with an online service seems to be following suit. So I just wanted to talk about these a little bit more. I suppose to start out with, I should try and classify them. I think that achievements sort of fall into 3 categories. You've got the mandatory ones. You get them just by progressing through the game and following the natural story. So long as you complete the game, there's no way you can't get all of the mandatory achievements, hence the name. I think on a fundamental level, they are flawed, just by the fact that they're mandatory. In essence, it exists as a participation award. So long as you get to this point, you receive whatever accolades everyone else would get. And I think that while participation awards are good in the sense that they boost self-esteem, I feel that they kind of cheapen the entire system. By definition, these are things you are trying to achieve. These should be things you go out of your way to make yourself seem awesome. But you just get them for playing the game, and I don't think that really works by definition of what they are. The second group of achievements are the optional ones, and these can be broken into 2 sets as well. The first set are the side quest achievements. Essentially, you get them for exploring an additional piece of the game that isn't mandatory to go through. Completing a side quest for an optional character, scouting out an optional area, even just finding a hidden pickup, or something along those lines. And while I don't think these are inherently bad as achievements, I don't think they're congruent to good game design. The reason is this. They are essentially an arbitrary collectible that you are receiving as reward for going through a piece of the game, right? A truly great game does not need some sort of reward to entice players to continue playing. A great game by itself should make players want to continue playing, just by the fact that they wish to continue to experience this game. Honestly, if you need an arbitrary collectible just to allow your players to go through your game and explore as much of the content as possible, I think you've done something wrong, because you really shouldn't have to bribe your players to continue playing. They should want to of their own free will because they enjoy this product, be it for its narrative, aesthetic, story, gameplay, whatever. If you need something to entice people to continue playing it, then I think you need to take a deeper look at your game and figure out why they're leaving it and what's missing from your game to keep people from playing it. The second type of optional achievement are those achievements. You know them, I know them. They're the grind-heavy achievements. These are the absolute worst kind of achievements for 2 very important reasons. First of all, you've got the basic understanding that they are essentially a waste of your time to get, and they're not terribly fun, they're monotonous, and they're just boring for whatever arbitrary gamer score they give you. But secondly is a much more psychological reason. These tread very dangerously close to something that's known as operant conditioning, and that's an episode for another time. But the long and short of it is, operant conditioning is a type of behavioral modification. Basically, you take your subject, you have them repeat something X number of times with promise of a reward, and when they don't do it, you punish them. Kind of like if you don't get X number of kills with X weapon, you don't get an achievement. Now, do I think that game designers are trying to... Now, do I think that people are trying to modify human behavior to get people to continue playing their games, or for whatever nefarious reason? No, of course not. That would be kind of crazy. I think this is all wholly unintentional, but the fact is that this does have the potential to cause problems later on. But I think that this practice is going into a somewhat dark and dangerous territory. The fortunate thing is people seem to absolutely hate these things, and are fairly aware of them and try and avoid them anyway just by the fact that they're terrible to deal with, so at least the community as a whole is trying to avoid them from what I've seen, so good on ya. The third classification of achievements is something I've found to be a hard one to name. For lack of a better name, I'm just going to refer to them as special achievements. These ones make you think of the game, or the game's mechanics, or even yourself in a little bit of a different light. And I have two examples for this, and they actually come from the same game, so that works out well for me. They came from the Orange Box. In Half-Life 1 Episode 1, there was an achievement to go through the entire game firing one bullet. This one bullet was necessary to shoot a lock off a door in order to advance. So you had to go across the entire game using only your crowbar, whatever grenades you could pick up, and your gravity gun. This meant that players who wanted to get this achievement couldn't just rely on their weapons. They had to rely on their environment. They had to rely on resource management, scouting areas ahead to try and figure out what you could use with your gravity gun. It made it a lot more of a tactical experience, and a different one from what other players might try and do, at least initially. The other example would be from Half-Life 2 Episode 2, which had players collect a physical garden gnome at the beginning of the game, and carry it all the way through, up to a point at the end. While this was essentially an escort quest, it changed the dynamic of gameplay up quite a bit. So instead of just worrying about yourself out there, you had to try and figure out what to do with this garden gnome, and you had to make sure you didn't lose it in fights. Fortunately, it was completely indestructible, so if nothing else, you could just leave it somewhere, but you had to make sure to go back for it. The reason why these special achievements are so important is by the fact that not only are you achieving something great, you're approaching gameplay completely differently. You have to think about how you're going to do this differently than you might just running through the game normally. It makes you think about how you as a person would approach a certain situation. It provides players a whole extra game to play without having to get programmers or designers to come up with all new assets, or without having to charge gamers more money for a whole extra game. You're getting it completely free, and more importantly, it was fun. It gave you something to look back on and say, yeah, I did that. That was great. Rather than those crappy grind-heavy achievements anyway. And that's why I think these special achievements are so important. Not only do they take a lot of creativity to design, but they took a lot of creativity just to try and approach as a gamer. It extended gameplay immensely, and in the end, it was like playing a whole different game, and you were still rewarded for it with whatever arbitrary collectible. And that's awesome. It took advantage of the achievement system, and it made the achievements work for the game. And that's kind of the entire point, I think. So we've classified the achievements, and I've talked about why certain ones are a lot better than others. Am I done here? Well, not quite. There is one more thing I'd like to address. And that's addiction. And I know that sounds weird, but hear me out on this. I think that collecting achievements and trophies is kind of like eating a bag of potato chips. you might be a little hungry, so you grab a handful, and then eventually you eat the whole bag, because you felt like you wanted more, even if you really didn't. Biologically speaking, it appeals to the same sort of sense that eating a bag of potato chips does. It triggers a certain center in your brain that makes you feel rewarded for it, and anything that does that can potentially be addictive. Now, am I saying that all achievement hunters are addicted to achievements? No. Some people just like doing that. Some people make an extra game out of it, and that's great. I'm all for it, that's awesome. But there are some people who will buy games just for the fact that they have achievements. And that's where this becomes a little bit of a problem. And I know what you're about to say, so they buy games just for the achievements. Where's the harm in that? Well, if you look at games that have a ton of really easy achievements, you can find them in stuff like Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is notorious for it. You could find it in stuff like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, or really many of the movie tie-in games. And I don't think I need to tell you the quality of movie tie-in games. They're not very good. And this is where it leads to the problem. By purchasing games just for the fact that they have achievements, and not on the merit of the game itself, ends up propagating games that might not necessarily be good. Now, on the other hand, this could lead you to buying games that are absolutely great that you wouldn't have picked up before, but at the same time, you're giving people money to continue to make really awful shovelware titles just because they have achievements and you can get them easily, just to boost your gamer score. See where this is starting to become a bit of a problem? So I suppose it's time for a solution. What can we do? Well, in order to get rid of all the really bad achievements, the crappy throwaway ones that just really aren't worth anything, the mandatory ones, those really potentially scary operant conditioning ones that no one likes anyway because they're full of grinding, I don't think that we as gamers can do anything, aside from simply not going after them and hope we send a message to developers about it. But I think we as developers have a ton of power. It's our ability to make these changes that are going to reflect well on us and our products. Now, as for dealing with buying crappy games just for the sake of achievements, I think that we as gamers have a lot more power. Purchasing games is like voting. You throw your money at stuff you want to succeed. So, if you want a bad, crappy shovelware title to fail, don't purchase it. If you have a friend who really likes achievement hunting and sees that that's something that has them, I would suggest trying to find an alternative, because good friends don't let friends buy crappy shovelware. Because it's ultimately on our consumer dollar that games continue to be produced. So if we put our foot down and just stop buying the really bad, crappy shovelware titles, they'll stop making them. Game development companies aren't stupid. They have marketing analysts for a reason. And that's to know what's selling and what's not. So, we show them what's selling. If you're still watching this, wow, you need a freaking achievement for that. But I think that in conclusion, there's two main points you need to take away from this. First off, achievements serve to make games better, to extend gameplay experience, and ultimately improve the games, but not the other way around. Games do not exist to further improve achievements. And the second thing to walk away from this is, ultimately, achievements, trophies, and other arbitrary rewards for gamers have the potential to do great things for this industry. They really do. I mean, we've seen it with a few different games. Some achievements have people speedrunning, which gets them into further speedrunning communities. It gives them a whole new passion, and that's great. But as of now, the vast majority are all mandatory or grind heavy and just absolutely garbage. And because of this, the achievement system as of now is completely borked. It's underutilizing its key strengths and what makes it powerful as a tool to make games better. And while I think that in the end they have the potential to make the entire industry thrive as a whole, even more than could potentially happen anyway, as of now, achievements not only are being underutilized for what they could potentially do, but I think they're hurting the industry as a whole, because ultimately, people will buy games simply because they have achievements. And I think there are some game development companies out there that know this, and that's why they just shovel out a few achievements with every expansion pack or whatever, and this could potentially seriously hurt the industry. But I hope that never happens. But all we can do is throw our money at stuff that works, and try and avoid the stuff that doesn't. But hopefully it's never going to come down to the worst case scenario. But until then,